Hello, my name is Jen Weldon. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. Most of us know that it was Franklin D. Roosevelt, more commonly known as FDR, that is credited with both of these famous quotes. But beyond his presidency and World War II, how much do you really know about FDR? I'd like to take some time today to tell you a little bit about just a few of the many accomplishments you might not have known about FDR. FDR accomplished much more than just becoming president and entering the United States into World War II. Did you know that FDR founded the March of Dimes? Or did you know that during the Great Depression, FDR created Social Security? Or how about the fact that FDR is also credited with being instrumental in the creation of the United Nations? Let's start with the March of Dimes. Originally called the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, the March of Dimes website lists Franklin D. Roosevelt as its founder. According to the biography posted on the Franklin D. Roosevelt Presidential Library and Museum website, surviving polio in 1921, which left him without the use of his legs for the rest of his life, inspired FDR to create the original foundation to help other polio victims. According to the same website, that same foundation later became the March of Dimes, directed by FDR, and is credited with funding an effective vaccine for polio. Besides his personal mission to help victims of polio, FDR also used his presidency to help the unemployed and the elderly. Having begun his presidency at the start of the Great Depression, FDR created many programs to help the unemployed and elderly, delivering on his New Deal campaign promise, the most notable of which was Social Security. According to the Social Security Administration's website, the Social Security Act was signed into law by FDR on August 14, 1935. According to that same website, provisions of the Act included unemployment insurance, old age assistance, aid to dependent children, and grants to the states to provide various forms of medical care. The Act has since been modified or amended many times to include much more. Another great accomplishment of FDR was the creation of the United Nations. During World War II, FDR moved to unite the nations fighting against the Axis powers by creating a grand alliance. According to the United Nations website, the term United Nations was coined by FDR and was first used in the Declaration by United Nations during World War II, signed January 1, 1942, by 26 of the nations fighting against the Axis powers. According to the biography posted on the Franklin D. Roosevelt Presidential Library and Museum website, that same declaration represented the signing nation's pledge to a peacekeeping organization, now known as the United Nations, upon victory over the Axis powers. Despite being President of the United States during some of the most troubled times in our history, namely the Great Depression and World War II, and despite being confined to a wheelchair, FDR accomplished many great things in his unprecedented 4 terms as President of the United States. I talked about how FDR founded the March of Dimes. Then I told you about how FDR created Social Security. And lastly, I talked about how FDR was instrumental in the creation of the United Nations. I've taken the time today to tell you a little bit about just a few of the many accomplishments you might not have known about FDR. I believe FDR was one of the greatest presidents we have had in our history, not just because he led our country through such troubled times, but because of the lasting effect he had both nationally and globally through his wide-reaching social reform and dedication to finding a vaccine for the disease that took the use of his legs from him. Thank you. Are there any questions? No? No? Good? Okay. Feedback time. And once again, we'll start with my husband. This is Jim.
Hello. I like this. I like this one. I liked how everything was so clear as usual. I don't have any critiques, so to speak. But I can tell when you start fidgeting, when you feel like you're gonna stumble, you kind of do that rock. It's like it's a little tell, but you know, if that's the biggest thing, then whatever. So I think overall good job. Everything was good.
Thank you. This is Dawn. Hello, Dawn.
Hi. I thought the speech was very good, concise, straight to the point. You can tell when you start to get nervous or when you mess up, because then you'll start to giggle a little bit. So maybe work on just moving through that. Otherwise, it was very good.
Thank you. And Melanie.
Hi, once again, you did very well, presented it well, looked at us all, and learned a lot about FDR.
Okay, and this is her husband, John.
I thought it was very well presented, right to the point. I guess learned quite a bit. So we're all good.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.